He made $412,000 in 8 years. He has $1,100 in his account today. Not because of a crash, not because of fraud, not because of any single catastrophic decision that can be identified, isolated, and learned from cleanly. Because of something that left no visible marks. Something that operated so quietly, so consistently, so far beneath the threshold of conscious awareness that he spent 8 years inside it without ever once suspecting it was there. When he finally saw it, he did not feel angry. He felt recognized. Like something that had always been true about him had finally been given a name. That name is not poverty. Poverty is a circumstance. What he was living inside was something older than his circumstances, more personal than his income, and more durable than any financial strategy ever built to escape it. It had survived raises. It had survived windfalls. It had survived every genuine, sincere attempt to build something different. Not because he lacked discipline, because he was trying to solve a financial problem that was not, at its root, financial. And until you understand what it actually is, every tool you use against it will fail the same way his did. Think about your own situation honestly before we go further. Not the version you would describe to someone else. The real one. Is there a gap between what you earn and what you actually keep? Has that gap stayed roughly consistent regardless of how your income has changed? Go to the comments right now and write yes or no. One word. Because the answer to that question is the first data point in an investigation most people never conduct about themselves. He grew up in a household where money was the source of everything dangerous. Not discussed, not planned, not treated as a tool, experienced as a threat. As the thing whose absence caused the arguments, whose presence was always temporary, whose disappearance was not a matter of if, but when. The adults around him did not teach him this. They lived it. And he, as children do, learned not from what they said, but from what they were. From the specific emotional frequency that filled the room whenever money entered the conversation. By the time he was an adult, that frequency had become his normal. He did not carry it consciously. He carried it the way you carry your posture without awareness, without intention, as the default physical expression of everything you absorbed before you knew you were absorbing anything. Here is what the research in financial psychology reveals that almost nothing else will tell you plainly. The financial behavior of adults is not primarily shaped by their financial knowledge. It is shaped by what researchers call the financial origin system, the complete set of beliefs, emotional associations, and unconscious conclusions about money that were formed during childhood through direct experience and environmental absorption. This system does not live in the conscious mind. It lives in the nervous system, in the body, in the reflexes that fire before reasoning has a chance to engage. And it does not update automatically when circumstances change. It requires deliberate, targeted, deeply uncomfortable excavation to revise. The kind of excavation that no budgeting app, no investment course, and no motivational content ever reaches. His financial origin system had been built around one central, unspoken, never examined conviction. Money is not something people like me hold on to. It moves through us. It does not stay. And wanting it to stay is a form of delusion that reality will correct. He would have denied this if you had asked him. Sincerely, with genuine conviction. Because the belief was not available to his conscious mind. It was operating below it, as the invisible architecture beneath every financial decision, shaping outcomes while the conscious mind believed it was navigating freely. This is the mechanism that makes the poverty pattern so difficult to see and so nearly impossible to escape through conventional means. The pattern does not feel like a pattern from the inside. It feels like life. It feels like how things are. Each individual event has a specific, reasonable, contextual explanation. The job situation, the unexpected expense, the timing, the economy, the particular circumstances of this specific moment that made this specific outcome make sense. None of those explanations are false. The problem is that explanations for individual events cannot reveal the architecture that produces them. You need altitude for that. You need to stop examining the trees and look at the forest. And the forest, for most people, is the thing they have been standing inside for so long, they have stopped being able to see it as a thing at all. If you have ever explained a financial setback to yourself with a reason that felt completely true but left you roughly where you started, go to the comments and write the pattern. Because what you just described is not a string of bad luck. It is a system operating exactly as it was built to operate. And the first step toward changing a system is recognizing that you are in one. The behavioral economics framework that best describes what he was living inside is called the financial thermostat. And it is one of the most important and least discussed concepts in all of personal finance. The theory, supported by substantial research, proposes that every person carries an internal financial set point, a specific level of financial reality that the nervous system has been calibrated to produce and maintain. When circumstances fall below that set point, the nervous system generates motivation and energy to recover. When circumstances rise significantly above it, the nervous system generates friction, resistance, the reliable appearance of reasons why the improvement cannot hold. The thermostat does not respond to intention. It does not respond to information. It responds to the internal calibration established during the formative years, reinforced by every subsequent experience that confirmed the original setting. And it maintains its temperature with a consistency that, once you can see it, is almost mechanical in its precision. For him, the thermostat had been set in a household of scarcity. Every time his financial life approached something meaningfully beyond that original setting, the mechanism engaged, not visibly, not through a single dramatic event, through a series of individually logical, collectively precise adjustments that returned him with quiet reliability to the temperature the system knew, a promotion absorbed entirely by lifestyle expansion, a savings milestone followed within weeks by an expense that consumed it exactly, a period of financial stability disrupted by a risk that in retrospect was never necessary. Each event explicable. The aggregate inexplicable by anything except the thermostat. Here is the layer of this that most channels will never reach, because this is where it stops being abstract and becomes genuinely confrontational. The thermostat is not just a behavioral mechanism, it is an identity mechanism. The financial set point is not simply a number the nervous system tries to maintain. It is a statement about who you are, about the kind of person you are, about the category of human being you belong to, and what that category is permitted to have. When financial reality begins diverging significantly from that identity, the brain does not experience it as success. It experiences it as a threat to coherence, as the unsettling feeling of being somewhere you do not belong. And the response to that feeling is not celebration. It is the urgent, unconscious, entirely invisible drive to return to familiar ground. This is why people who receive sudden wealth lottery winners, inheritance recipients, athletes who sign large contracts without the psychological infrastructure to hold what the contracts provide return to their previous financial position with a statistical consistency that should disturb everyone who observes it. It is not irresponsibility. It is identity maintenance. The money that exceeded the internal set point was, at the deepest level of the nervous system, a foreign object. And the body is very good at removing foreign objects. Pause here and ask yourself something that requires genuine honesty. Is there a specific level of financial comfort beyond which something in you becomes quietly uncomfortable? Not exciting. Uncomfortable, like it is not quite real. Like it cannot last. Like you are waiting for the correction that will return the rest of what feels wrong. If that description finds something real in you, write thermostat in the comments right now. Because naming it is not weakness. It is the first act of revision. So what actually changes it? This is the question that matters. And the honest answer is the one most financial content refuses to give because it does not sell products and it does not produce quick results. What changes it is not information. The information required to build wealth is not complicated, and it is not scarce. What changes it is not motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings change. And a financial identity that has decades of momentum behind it does not dissolve, because a feeling visited for an afternoon. What changes it is not discipline applied to the surface of the problem while the root remains entirely undisturbed. What changes it is excavation, the specific, targeted, genuinely uncomfortable process of identifying the exact belief, the precise sentence that the nervous system has been executing. Not a general acknowledgement that childhood was difficult. The specific operating instruction. For him, it was this: money is not something people like me hold on to. 7 words. Built before he could evaluate them. Executed faithfully for 8 years. Costing, by conservative calculation, everything he had built. When he found that sentence, when he could hold it in front of him as a sentence rather than experiencing it as reality, something shifted that no budget had ever touched. Not the financial picture immediately, the relationship between the belief and the behavior, the gap between the instruction and the execution, a gap that had never existed before. And in that gap, for the first time, something other than the old pattern became possible. The work that followed was not dramatic. It was not a transformation. It was the slow, non-linear, frequently discouraging process of making different choices against the persistent resistance of a system that had operated unopposed for decades, of allowing accumulation to continue past the threshold where the old pattern would have redirected it, of sitting with the anxiety that the pattern used to resolve, and learning, gradually, that the anxiety was survivable, that it passed. That the correction the nervous system kept predicting did not arrive just because the threshold had been crossed. He is not wealthy today, but he has something he has never had before, a growing account that he has not found a reason to empty. Not because he is more disciplined than he was, because the instruction that used to generate the reasons has been seen, and seen things lose their power to operate invisibly. The poverty pattern nobody sees is not a financial pattern. That is the entire investigation. It is a psychological one, a nervous system one, an identity one. Built before you had any say in its construction, operating below the level where conventional financial tools reach, producing outcomes that feel like circumstance but are actually architecture. And architecture, unlike circumstance, can be redesigned, but only by the person willing to stop explaining the individual events and start examining the system that keeps producing them. So here is the final question, the one worth sitting with longer than this video lasts. What is the sentence your nervous system has been executing about what you are permitted to have, and is it a sentence you would write for yourself today if you were writing it for the first time? Go to the comments. Write the sentence, the real one, not the edited version. Because the distance between those two is exactly where the pattern lives, and the pattern ends the moment it can no longer operate in the darkness.